Welcome everybody. My name is Amy Pimentel and I'm your Zoom host today for our presenters. So this is the Credit for Prior Learning and Equity Lever for Success. So just want to make sure you are all in the right place. Please keep yourself muted. You can use the Q&A section on Whova if you need to ask any questions, and our presenters will pause throughout different times in their presentation in order to answer any questions. So I want to introduce Tina Barlolong and Candace Rose, and I'm going to let them take it away from here. Thank you, ladies.
Hi, everyone. So it's great to have you here today. Tina and I are excited to do this workshop with you for Credit for Prior Learning. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and start out with the slides. Tina and I are both from Palomar College, and on this first slide here, you'll see that we have some photos from our programs, 3 of our programs that are currently offer credit for prior learning opportunities for our students through our fire technology, our EME, and our air conditioning, refrigeration, and heating. So Tina, I'm gonna let you introduce yourself.
Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Tina Barlolong. I am a veterans counselor primarily at Palomar College, and I'm also the CPL counselor. So right now, I'm the first point of contact. I know that this is something that will probably be extended out to other counselors as well. So welcome, everyone.
Oops. Let me move back here, moving through my slides. Hi, everyone. I'm Candace Rose. I am the Credit for Prior Learning Coordinator at Palomar College. I'm also faculty in our Media Studies department. So I do teach our screenwriting and film production, film appreciation courses, which are also career technical education. And within our department, we have some credit for prior learning as well. And I also wanted to mention too, and we'll talk about this as we go through, that Tina and I also, along with her being our veterans counselor, we work very closely with our military students in our new military leadership program, which is also really closely tied with credit for prior learning as well. So I was thinking it would be great. We don't have, so Amy, with the chat feature, they can see the chat, correct? When they do the chat?
So they'll see the chat in Whova, and if you need me to read anything from that chat, just let me know.
Well, I just thought it would be really nice for everybody to introduce themselves and just basically say hi in the chat, okay. and maybe where they're from. It's just I'm not logged into Whova, and I don't know, Tina, can you see the names?
I can log into Whova.
Okay, so if one of us could log in.
Just when you log into Whova, make sure you don't join the Whova audio, because you'll have the echo thing that I was having at the beginning.
Okay, so I'm not going to join Whova because I'm doing the slides, and that's enough technical for me today. But go ahead and say hi to each other. Maybe mention what college you're from, or if you're from a high school, or wherever you're from. I think that would be great just to kind of see who's in the room. So I'll go ahead and move on with our introductions, but then maybe Tina, when you get that up, you can kind of just, say hi and mention who's in our room today. All right. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and move on. So our outcomes today, what we would like for you to come away with from this workshop is that you'll understand credit for prior learning as an equity lever. And how does that, how does this benefit our students and create more equity for our students? Describe and explain credit for prior learning assessment methods. So we will touch on those, and explore the student experience in the credit for prior learning process. Identify the next steps for establishing credit for prior learning at your college. So let's kind of start here with the, what is credit for prior learning? And so credit for prior learning is now a part of our Title V 55050. It used to be called credit by exam. Elizabeth, did you have a question?
Yes, I'm sorry. My chat is disabled. Is that something on my end or the organizers that has to enable it?
The chat is disabled on Zoom. You want to use the chat on Whova.
Okay, got it. I'm very sorry.
No problem.
That's good. You're fine. I'm not logged into Whova. I'm only logged into Zoom, which is why I can't see the chat feature. But Amy's logged in and Tina's going to log in so she can see that. That was a good question. You're probably not the only one, Elizabeth.
Yeah, so you want it to the right of the video of like what you're seeing of the presentation. You'll see where it says Q&A, polls, chat, community. Click on the chat there, and then you should be able to see everything.
I can see your names though, so I can see like who's in the room. Okay, so one of the things I think is interesting and important to remember, especially when you're messaging credit for prior learning to the rest of your constituents on campus and things like that, is that credit for prior learning is not brand new. It was credit by exam. That was what the Title V was. 55050 was credit by exam. And our chancellor's office sort of extended that or expanded it and changed that Title V to become credit for prior learning, which still has credit by exam under that umbrella. They included AP, IB, and CLEP, which is our Advanced Placement International Baccalaureate and college level exam preparation under that umbrella. But I do want to point out that AP, IB, and CLEP have their own policy, and that policy does supersede the credit for prior learning policy. So just to clarify if that gets confusing for you. And now under credit for prior learning, they've also included, and you'll see down here, the industry certification, the portfolio review option, and the military transcript. So this sort of movement to bring us, more into, I would say, the present day with our students with credit for prior learning came about because of a couple of bills that were passed back in, I think, 2018 by then Governor Brown, which was that credit for prior learning would be college credit awarded for validated college level skills and knowledge gained outside a college classroom. And so that students' knowledge and skills could be gained through experiences such as the military training, the industry training and certification, state, federal government training, volunteer and civic activities, and then apprenticeships, internships, work-based learning, or other industry-based experiential learning. And the important thing to keep in mind is that when they talk about validated college level skills and knowledge gained outside a classroom, this is where the learning outcomes of a course become so important, because a student needs to demonstrate that they have met those learning outcomes with their outside experiences. And so we'll talk more about that in just a little bit when we get into how do you do assessments? How do you determine that a student qualifies to earn these credits? Okay. Tina, did you have anything to add about that? Okay.
Right now.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to turn this one over to Tina and let her talk about why this is so important.
So credit for prior learning, actually, it's closing our equity gaps, or closing equity gaps. And so we find that most Californians who could benefit from CPL are people of color. And what it does, it validates learning that has already occurred. So as Candace had mentioned, folks are coming onto campuses with so much experience, whether it be on the job, like they work already in this field, the military training, they have industry certifications, and they're veterans. And so it validates that this learning has occurred, and it saves money and time. So in that sense, it shortens the programs, and it increases the employer partnerships, because then this is how we are able to create those connections with the industries to find out, who are the folks that are working, and then introducing maybe, if they have degrees, if they have certificates, kind of like re-upping and reskilling, and getting them those degrees. And it also aligns with guided pathways. So there's two infographics here. The first one at the top, it demonstrates, or it says many students who could benefit from CPL are non-military veterans. And then the second one is looking at most Californians who could benefit from CPL are people of color. And so in terms of the achievement gap and the equity gap, getting them that degree or the certificate in a very shorter period of time and validating that work experience it leads to that sense of accomplishment that, you know, you don't have to start at ground zero. You're already there. You already have these credits, and you don't, and they're not elective credits, right? Because as we see some like military credit, for example, you know, that conversation that we have about, okay, it covers PE, health, and area E. Okay, 4 credits, big whoop, right? Like, but that's boot camp. At the same time, though, if you've gone through, you know, different schools, or like Candace mentioned, our military leadership program, our sergeant schools, that's 12 credits right off the bat, right there. So that's a certificate, leads to an associate's degree, and we also have a transfer articulated program with National University and Arizona State University. So it shortens that path. It gets students excited to let them know that, you know, you're not at ground zero. You've already got to step in. So that's great.
Absolutely. Amy, do they have the access to these slides? Because I had sent them over earlier. And if I put them in the chat, they won't get them.
Yes, everyone has access to the slides. If you scroll down below the like the screen of where you're seeing the video, down below you'll see the speaker's name, the description, and then there's a handout. I can try putting it in the Whova chat, but there is there for download. If someone is having trouble, just let me know.
Okay. And I would like you to all have obviously access to this, because we do have some clickable links. So for example, if we go back here, this information that we gathered for you comes from California Competes, which is a PDF that you can take a look at. And then also up here is an article that you can take a look at as well. Okay, so I just wanted to give you some information. We're also going to show you our Palomar College website, and we have a lot of resources on there for you from our Kale Institute as well. So there is a lot of data out there. California is a little slow to the party and doing prior learning assessments. Colleges throughout the rest of the country have been doing it for some time. So there is some really good data out there. And one of the things that I message to my campus, to my colleagues and my faculty, is that studies show that our adult learners who qualify for this credit for prior learning credits, right? Like Tina said, they feel validated. These are students who may not have ever considered going to college. And once they realize that they've got, you know, prior learning, they can earn a class or 2 or 3, right? And they're already on their way to gaining their degree. These students are more likely to not only be retained, but to complete. These are the motivated adult working students who are more likely to complete. And they are on that pathway to, you know, improving their source of income, their jobs, providing for their families, career, gaining advancements in their careers and things like that. So that's really something to message and to keep in mind as well. Credit for prior learning isn't necessarily for every student, but certainly our adult learners that are coming back after having some life experience, industry experience, military experience. Okay. All right. So we got a little activity we would like to do with you. So Amy, how do we do this? So I have a Google Doc that I need to share out with them. Is that something, Tina, you're able to do?
I did this morning because I was in the conference yesterday and I was like, oh, we can't click on things. So I included the QR code. So if you are on a device like on your phone, you could scan that QR code. It'll lead you to a Google Doc.
If they wanted it on their computer, since you're on, did you open the other, whatever that other app is called?
Whova.
The
Mm-hmm.
Whova? Can you just put it into Whova? Because I can put this into I think I can chat with you through Zoom. Because I would like them, some of them might want to do this off of their computer.
Whose job is it anyway?
Yes. Do you have that, Amy?
Yep, I'm going to put it in the chat.
So good. All right. Amy's earning her time here.
Should be in the chat, everybody. And if, so again, you're going to use the chat in Whova. It's to the right of the video screen. And should be the very first really long link that I put in is the link to the presentation. The second one I just did is to the Google Doc.
And is this QR code, Tina, for the Google Doc or for the guidance memo?
For the Google Doc.
Okay. That's
I'm going
okay.
to put the link.
Do you need
to
the guidance memo
Yeah,
also?
could you also put that in there? So I will bring up the guidance memo on my screen, but it's big, right? It's long. Does that make sense? So it would be easier if they also had that. So here's what we're going to do with this activity. Okay, so we're going to read through the Title V guidance memo, but we don't really have time for you to read the whole thing. So what I'd like you to do once I open this up is you're going to open it up. You'll open up your Google Doc link. And I want you to identify a section in Title V. So really what I want you to do is skim the Title V guidance memo from the Chancellor's Office. So this is Title V, but with suggestions and recommendations from the Chancellor's Office. And just so you know, this document lives on my desktop. I refer to this several times a week. I know Tina's constantly looking at it. This is our guide. So I just want you to scan and pick one of those letters, pick one of those sections, and then you're going to go into your Google Doc and you can just click on any of these little boxes or sections, and we can add more if we need to. You're just going to click on one of those and you will just like put letter A or letter B or whatever your letter K. Who do you think, and this is just brainstorming, list the role or departments that you think are responsible for that section of Title V, and then describe what you think their next steps would be. So for example, we're going to open this up. I'm going to make this a little bigger for you to read. Okay, so if we scroll down, gives us the definition of what credit for prior learning is right here, which I already covered with you, right? And then amendments to the Title V 55050 credit for prior learning. You can see that they go through, you know, section A, section B, section C. I want you to scroll, find one that you're interested in, read through that, and then go ahead and start filling out our little Google Doc. We'll take a few minutes to do that. Okay. Tina, can you keep the Google Doc open? Do you have that open? And you should have the ability to edit that. So if we need more little rows, you could add those to it. Okay, and so let's just take a moment. Are there any questions right now? You guys feel free to unmute and communicate because I can't see the chat, or I think Tina can see the chat. So do you have any questions for us at this point, or what we're doing at this point? Does that all make sense? All right, I'm assuming you all know what you're doing. It's like my students, right? Someone talk to me.
And while you're reading, Candace, I just wanted to share with you just the check-ins that were shared in the chat. Yeah. So we have Liliana coming in from, she's a DSPS counselor from Imperial Valley College. Julianne from EOPS at San Diego Mesa College. Paige is a district counselor from Imperial Valley. Daisy is a transition specialist from East Region Adult Education, and Angela Kong from Palomar College. She's a service learning coordinator at Palomar. Hi, Angela. And then we have Amy, our moderator. So thanks, Amy, for being here. We wouldn't be able to share these things without you here. So thank you.
Awesome. Well, it is great to have all of you here. And I'm going to click over to this article here. Let's see, refresh this. So at this point, yes, be clicking on, so just pick a section of your Title V, and hopefully you're all able to open this, right? And you just click on a section. You should all be able to edit. If for any reason you can't edit, please let us know. Do we have it editing capable? Somebody type something in. Thank you, Anonymous Grizzly. I do appreciate that, because I always panic. Well, you know, many of you are probably teachers too, or at least have done a lot of work on Zoom. And there's always that moment of, man, I hope I set that up right. So you're picking a section. So for example, I can demonstrate for Title V 55050I, A district may charge a student a fee for administering an examination pursuant to this section, provided the fee does not exceed the enrollment fee, which would be associated with enrollment in the course for which the student seeks credit by examination. And just so you know, that is a rollover from the old Title V. But there's this great little bullet point. While districts may charge a fee for examinations as defined in the CPL assessment methods section below, districts should keep student equity in mind when determining fees and ensure that fees do not limit access to CPL by placing an undue financial burden on students. So at Palomar, we've been charging fees for decades for credit by exam. So in my section, so I'm going to put section, I'll just do it down here, section I, okay. Who is responsible? Because I want those fees to be removed. So I'm going to say CPL coordinator, counselor, right? And then I'm going to say, you know what? I need to get my dean involved. I'm going to say dean overseeing CPL. I already know who we had to talk to. Is our VPI, so our vice president of instruction, and this went actually all the way to our president. I would include also our VP of student services. Okay, we had to get a team together to discuss it. Let's see, meetings, research. We had to have discussions, or I was just like, let's just remove the fee, everyone. This is clearly creating a financial burden. We have students that choose not to do our credit by exam option because they can't afford it, and they end up taking the class anyway, even though they would have qualified for CPL. So what we had to do is we had to present a little bit of research. How many courses are students petitioning for, how much money is coming in, so on and so forth. So those are things that we had to do. And then we got our president to agree to doing for spring semester, she's going to waive the fees and credit by exam. Well, now that takes in student services, and we have to include the cashier's office, our what we call our business systems analysts, who created our petition form to update our petition form to take out that they have to do the fees, things like that. We need to alert faculty and students. So these are some of the next steps that we had to do. So that's kind of what we're wanting you to think about as you go through this form. And again, I wouldn't recommend today, right now, reading through the whole memorandum, because it'll take you a little bit, although I do want you to be familiar with it. But if you can just pick one, scroll down, pick one, take a look at it, and then just start thinking, who do you think on your campus you're going to need to involve, right? To do this. There is one, let me look. This one I think is interesting, right? The policies for assessment, a letter K, shall offer students an opportunity to accept, decline, or appeal decisions related to the award of credit, and in cases of credit by exam. And so, how do we do that, right? Who do we need to loop into that? There's a lot of things that have to happen in the back end. I love this one about the educational plan. That's been very important. Actually, we've seen that be essential to our students. And that is why Tina, as our sort of designated credit for prior learning coordinator, has been so important to our process. Because it says right in Title V that shall require that a student, upon completion of their educational plan, shall be referred to the college's appropriate authority for assessment of prior learning if the student is a veteran or an active duty member of the armed forces, holds industry recognized credentials, or requests credit for a course based on the prior learning. So we have to put into place a process to automatically refer students to faculty for assessment of prior learning if they meet one of these three conditions. Well, in order to do their education plan, they really need to be involved with their counselors. And so that's key. How do you make that happen? Who do you need to include in that process, right? So these are some things. And let's take about, I'm just looking at the clock. Let's take about maybe 1 or 2 more minutes. Okay. Good. And as we're doing that, we'll kind of look through some of these. So we've got section D. I'm going to bring section D up. Ooh, this is a good one. Someone jumped on the big one. All right. This is important. The credit for prior learning is for individually identified courses with subject matter similar to that of the individual's prior learning, and only for a course listed in the catalog of the community colleges, right? Colleges shall consider the credit recommendations of the ACE, American Council on Education. And then once they've demonstrated that mastery, right, the credits should be made, and if possible, to California intersegmental general education transfer curriculum, California State University general education breadth, and local community college general education requirements or requirements for student chosen program. Award of credit may be made to electives for students who do not require additional general education or program credits to meet their goals. And this is great. You know, CPL must be tied to a course so that faculty can assess prior learning according to a student's learning outcomes. If the college does not offer a course aligned with the student's learning, faculty can work with faculty at another college on the assessment or refer the student to another college for assessment. That'll be in the future, right? When we have more of a database and we can work with our colleagues across the state and say, you know what, we don't offer that particular program that you have all of this prior learning in, but I happen to know that Miramar offers that, or, you know, and then be able to connect them to that credit for prior learning coordinator or those faculty and help that student on their path. And faculty,
right?
yeah, exactly. We've had that a couple of times where we're just like, okay, here's where you would need to go. And they also stress that faculty must grant credit first in general education or program areas. And then electives are only as a last resort because we want to help advance students towards certificates of degrees. So that's great. I love that you put A&R, counseling, faculty at students' college, possibly other colleges. Good. This is great. Board needs to establish the policies and procedures. Counseling helps students determine where CPL could fit into the CSEP. Faculty. This is great, you guys. All right. So the reason that we wanted to put this little activity together for you was, one, we wanted to get you familiar with this Title V memorandum. Again, something we keep on our desktops. But two, we wanted you to start thinking about credit for prior learning outside of even your role, right? Because as counselors, you know your job and you know what you do as students, but you also know that your job and your success of helping those students depends on so many other departments within your college. Counselors have nothing to do with transcription, transcribing CPL, right? Faculty either. That was probably one of my biggest challenges, was like, how do we do this stuff, right? And how do you get those people on board to do this, especially when for some people, credit for prior learning is new, or it's just one more thing to add to their list of things they already need to do, right? All right, so for the sake of time, we're gonna go ahead and move on. Tina, did you have anything else you wanted to add, or are we good?
No, it's interesting because, you know, as Candace said, it lives on our desktops. It lives on my desktop too. And I still read it at least three times a week, because it's like, well, how are we interpreting this and how could it be interpreted? And just trying to find those gaps to define and you know, figure out how we as an institution are going to interpret and utilize it.
Absolutely. And I'm just curious, I think you all have access to your reactions in Zoom. How many of you are already familiar with this memorandum? Raise your hand or give a thumbs up or do a green check mark in Zoom. In that little menu bar, you'll see it. If you don't see it, there's a more and 3 little dots. You can click on that and that should take you to reactions, and you can give a reaction. If you're on a phone, there's also a way to do it. It's a little trickier on your phone app. But how many of you are already familiar with this memorandum?
If it's not letting you for whatever reason, you could put it in the comments, and it can do that too. Yeah.
Okay.
If you want to forward the slide, Candace, I could talk about our champions.
Yeah, let's
start. So our college and a district CPL student experience champions. Okay, so who are they on campus? Who are we? This is a great photo. This is our first cohort in the middle of a pandemic, graduating with our military leadership program. And so who are the champions? So obviously it's the counselors, right? I mean, we're definitely on the front line. We are the ones that would have this base knowledge. We know what programs we offer, and we have those conversations with our students in terms of where they've been, what kinds of experiences are they coming in with, and then also linking it to what programs are they interested in pursuing, and maybe what are the reasons behind it. Because if we could get them faster, right, then we can help them imagine how, what this timeline is going to look like. If you can shorten it and tell them, hey, we already got this and we can go through this process, then, students don't know, right? Students don't know what they don't know. So it's great for them to say, hey, I've got this industry certification and I'm doing this degree in networking. Well, you've got C++, like that's like at least 9 units right there, at least, right? So the faculty champions, who are they in terms of instruction? Creating that credit for prior learning course crosswalk inventory sheet. One of the questions that when Candace and I were starting this up with our faculty, with our instruction, was identifying quick way. What are some of those course substitutions that you're coming in with? What are those conversations that you're having with students in terms of their experiences and what that looks like, right? So in terms of inventory sheets and doing a crosswalk, identifying what are those things, those conversations, that's like low hanging fruit right there, right? And the faculty, they have to establish a portfolio rubric to determine what are the student learning outcomes? What are the things that are going to come in to demonstrate their scope, their scale, and knowledge? And also creating how-to videos, right? And then offering it up as professional development. So this is something in terms of deans and department chairs, but extending it out to other instructional faculty. So it's not just a one-person job. It's everyone's job, because we all have all the different experiences, and we have different conversations with different students. And then in terms of student services, how do we make credit for prior learning accessible? How do we provide support through this entire process? And creating this petition, right? So is it a paper form, right? We created an electronic form that moves faster, in terms of signature, so that students are no longer having to pick up a paper form in the records office and trailing it to each of the departments for signatures. It could get lost, it could whatever, right? And at the end of the day, this form ultimately ends up in evaluations. We've transformed it so that it's an electronic process. And so the coordinator, we could look and see where is maybe a form stuck, and how and when do we follow up with whoever's got the form to say, what do we need to do? And then looking at our transcripts, student services, with the transcription, looking at what that looks like. What does this look like on our transcripts when students order that official copy of transcripts, and how is it going to be presented to whoever opens up and applies, college credit at the institutions and jobs and whatnot.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right. Go ahead and
then the student credit for prior learning experience. So some things that we need to consider are, how are students going to learn about these opportunities? So we have, like a campaign. Is there a campaign somewhere? We have a website set up, and how is that information presented? Who can students contact for guidance through the CPL process? So there's, the CPL website, and then there's the contacts, right? So how do we kind of filter all of that to get to the appropriate folks, right? Do students have a dedicated CPL counselor? Currently it's me, but ultimately it's going to be all of us, right? So it's been like a year and a half, 2 years, Candace, and I am naturally, I guess it fits because, well, I don't guess, it does definitely fits because we had the military leadership program. I'm also the veterans counselor, so it made sense for me to pick up the CPL. Also gave me an opportunity to work outside of military affiliated students. I'm a general counselor, but as a veterans counselor, it's educational plans and GI Bill, everything. And so it gives me an opportunity to talk to other parts of student population that are coming in with different experiences, and that's also great. And determining, the counselor is determining whether or not CPL is the right choice. We don't want to give you credit just to give you credit. We want to make sure that the credit that we're giving you is going to be applicable towards the degree plans that you're pursuing, right? Because there's definitely implications. If we just gave you all this credit up front, there's implications of financial aid, and there's implications of, you know, losing your priority enrollment because there's all these credits, right? But the biggest one is financial aid. Are there transfer issues with CPL? Well, currently, the CSUs have received guidance, and they have also provided us, the community colleges, with guidance to say that, you know, they are going to honor credit for prior learning. So that was always a conversation. This is, and I say the CSUs, right? It's California State Universities. The UCs have always been, you know, a little bit more strict and a little rough to kind of get that CPL process together. But, you know, the CSUs got together and they issued that that information. They put it out there that, you know, if the community colleges are going to grant that credit for prior learning, they're going to take it. So now the CSUs need to figure out their processes in terms of how that's going to look. Looking at the CPL petition process, is it easy? Is it accessible for students to get through? And then also, what are some other supports that are available to students to help them succeed? So we're looking at, you know, when we look at portfolio, what are those requirements? What do they look like? Getting them ready for an exam, right? So credit by exam. Looking at military transcript submission process, so looking at those joint service transcripts. And then also looking at the industry certificate review and submission process. So there's a lot of collaboration with different champions on campus, with you know, the BSA, right? So in terms of being able to have a repository for all of this to happen and for students to connect with faculty in order for that credit to show up on their transcript.
All right, so this is our simple flow chart example. These are some of the steps to consider, and this is kind of how we've set it up at Palomar. It might be different at your college or whatever works for you, but first, the student needs to somehow learn about CPL. We do have a couple of different methods for that. One, like Tina mentioned, we do have our website, and that is a resource for you as well. So if you go under Palomar College, if you go to our Palomar College website, it can take you right to our credit for prior learning page as well. And maybe that's something that Tina or Amy, you could put right into the chat for them, okay? We also have an intake survey that our students take when they first enroll at Palomar College, and that is for their math and English placement. Well, we've added on a few questions about credit for prior learning, so that also gives students an opportunity to learn about CPL. And then moving forward, we're looking for hopefully by spring that we could be doing a much bigger campaign. We first had to get our processes in place, of course, and now we feel like we've had time to test everything out, and we could be doing more of an advertising campaign to our students, whether that's banners on our homepage or in Canvas. You can put little announcements, things like that, to alert students to this opportunity. Part of it has also been educating our faculty. Our faculty are one of our biggest sort of champions for credit for prior learning, and so they've been able to let their students know or inform their students as well of these opportunities. The student will meet with our CPL coordinator, counselor, department chair, depending on the method of assessment, certainly with credit by exam and portfolio review in particular. With industry certification and military transcripts, sometimes the faculty are also meeting with the students. And once the faculty have determined, well, this QuickBooks certificate equals this QuickBooks class, if that makes sense or articulates, then the faculty doesn't necessarily need to meet with every single student that comes through with that, because it's already been, determined or articulated. Okay. From there, again, the determination of the CPL method of assessment is decided for many of our courses. If you look on our website, we have a course list page. If you click on that, and I will show you our website here in a moment. If you click on that, you will also see different methods of assessment that students can pick from. Faculty administers and then assesses and submits the final grade for both a portfolio and a credit by exam. And if military transcript or industry certificate, the petition form will flow directly to our records and then credit for prior learning will be transcribed. This CCC credit for prior learning toolkit is a resource for you that is also on our website. But this was something that Palomar helped to put together for our Chancellor's office. So if you ever go to the Vision Resource Center, it's listed there. And this is also a great toolkit to help your colleges set up credit for prior learning. So here's our credit for prior learning website page. And I'm going to go ahead and show you that real quick. Just looking at the clock here, so I want to keep an eye on our time. So this is our landing page for credit for prior learning, and this will answer some questions. We kind of geared it, Tina and I geared it towards our students, but really anybody who's interested in what is it, right? Some frequently asked questions. How can it help me? Who qualifies? How do I demonstrate that I have that prior learning? What courses are currently eligible for credit for prior learning? Does it cost anything? And so on and so forth. So you can certainly look through that. And then over here, you'll see we have the course list page, which I'll show you in a moment. There's how to apply. We also have a student resource page, a faculty resource page, the CPL materials, and resources page as well. So if you click here, this is something that I wanted to show you. Hang on one second. And so this is something I wanted to show you as well. There's some information here that will be very helpful to you. And I want you just to kind of scroll through this and take a look. Hang on. I have a worker outside and I want to let him know I'm not done till 11:30. Just letting them know. Okay, so this will be some great resources for you. And down here also, you'll see that we have some outside info and outside resources to help you as well. So be sure to check that out. If we look at this course list page, I wanted to show you, this is something to be thinking about with your own college. How do we let students know? And again, I want you to really sort of grasp this idea that your college is already doing credit for prior learning. Your college has already been doing credit by exam, and you have faculty who are waiving credits for students. In other words, students can challenge usually a prerequisite and get that course waived. And so at our campus, we are letting all of our deans and administrators know, and chairs who often have to sign off on those challenge and waiver forms, that, hey, now the law states we need to allow those students to earn that credit. If a faculty member has determined that a student has met those learning outcomes and doesn't need the prerequisite course to get into the advanced course, then that student should have the ability and the option, I should say, to earn those credits, right? Because yeah, go ahead, Tina.
I want to pause there, Candace, because that was actually a question that was asked in the breakout session. So the question was, is there a significant difference between CPL and the process of clearing a prerequisite? It seems CPL is more focused on real world experience, but can also include prior academic credit. Absolutely. So I can give you an example, languages, right? So there are, in the past, when students would clear a prerequisite for Spanish 101, right? They're trying to get to 102 or 201. Well, we don't have credit by exam for 201. So let's just say 102, right? 102, right? Spanish 102. But they took Spanish in high school, 3 years, right? For an IGETC, that'll clear the language requirement. But if they're just trying to get to the next level, you know, it used to be, you know, process to clear the requisite was real easy, but they weren't getting the credit for the Spanish 101. So this now all of a sudden will allow them to get that credit if they needed it, right? Which could help, especially if a student is pursuing a low unit major or that associate's degree for transfer in a language. Then we want to make sure that we're granting them that full 5 credits for the 101.
Absolutely. And again, we still have the option of waiving or challenging the prerequisite through a waiver. I just had a student in photo who petitioned for that. And I also happen to be the chair of media studies. So that form luckily came to me. And I was able to reach out to that student and say, hey, you do have the option if you want to earn those credits. Because the idea is you had to demonstrate to your faculty anyway right? That you qualified to have that course challenged or waived. This particular student said she didn't want the credits. She wasn't really going for the degree or certificate. And okay, that's great, but at least she was aware of that. And then I've had other students the opposite. Oh, thank you so much. This is fantastic. Wait, you mean I'm that much closer to getting my certificate or degree? And that's very, very exciting for the students. And also, I would say for me and for Tina and for the faculty as well, when we see those students come through. So I just wanted to show you this. This is our sort of database of where we're, where you can see what courses, and we're continuing to add to them. And I also want to point out that, when we started with this, we had 11 faculty or 11 disciplines, and I think we ended up with maybe like 20 courses, things like that. And we started out slow, and many of those were already the credit by exam courses. So include those. And these were the early adopting faculty who were basically waiving those credits. And then from there, it has continued to grow. So of course, you don't have to wait till you have a huge database to get started. You've already started on your campus. You're just expanding that. Oops. Okay. So the next thing I wanted to show you, one of the requirements of Title V is that credit for prior learning has to be indicated and transcribed on a student's transcript. And so right here, we've got our military credit example. It says prior learning assessment. Here would be the military ACE ID, and here are the courses that qualified, that student qualified for having that military ACE ID. And you can see with military, we just do a pass grade because that obviously we don't have a grade to give them by looking at their ACE ID. And the same thing with our industry certification, the course that they qualify for, the CSNT 150, this is the certification. It's the AWS Academy Cloud Foundations, and they can receive a pass. When it comes to the credit by exam or the prior learning assessment portfolio, you can see that those are indicated here. These are also transcribed in the semester that the student is earning that credit through portfolio or through credit by exam. And these students can earn a letter grade. At Palomar, our faculty use rubrics to assess those portfolios. It does say in Title V that if the course is offered for both grade or pass, no pass, that the student should have that opportunity as well if they're doing the exam or portfolio review. So we do offer that as well. All right.
And I just want to jump in. It's 11:17, so you guys have about 13 minutes left.
Perfect. And we landed on the question slide at that perfect moment. So we're going to open it up to you. Why don't you guys go ahead and ask us some questions? You can put it into the chat or feel free to unmute or raise your hand.
I don't think that we can with the Zoom. So questions are gonna come in through Huva, right, Amy? I think.
Yeah, they'll come in through the Huva chat, or they can use the Q&A in Huva.
Right, but they can also, I saw that I think it was Elizabeth had raised her hand, right? So they can still do reactions in Canvas, and I would assume they can unmute.
I believe they can unmute because someone did earlier. So,
so tell us, what questions do you have?
I'll ask a question. Where do you see, or how do you, so I currently, a big part of my job is managing the high school articulation agreement process. And we transcript we do the notation of credit by exam. Yes. Do you see this process being kind of enveloped into this larger credit for prior learning? Do you know if there's discussions at the Chancellor's office about that?
So I'll start and I'll let Tina join in too. So I just had a meeting, a workshop where Shante Guinea from the Chancellor's office had joined in, and she oversees our credit for prior learning along with Dr. Aisha Lowe. And I asked her this question. I said, because we need clarification. I've been asking this for a while. We need clarification because some colleges are including the high school articulation credit by exam as part of credit for prior learning, and some are not. And so in the data, now that we have to report data to our Chancellor's office, I said, this is going to skew the data. So she told me, and this was just last month, that the chancellor's office is in the process of creating an addendum to the memorandum. So that document that Tina and I keep on our desktop, there's going to be another one. And in that addendum, they are going to address the high school articulations and the credit by exam through the high schools. And they'll let us know, where does this fall, right? Because for us at Palomar, we do not include that as part of credit for prior learning. That is not part of our process. That is not part of that particular transcription. And we don't include that in our data. But there are other colleges that are including that. And so, again, we just need that. We're just going to wait and see what the chancellor's office says, and then we'll kind of go from there. Tina, did you want to add to that?
Well, I was going to say, oh, I can't follow that. I mean, you've got more information. She's closer. Candace is closer to more of the information, and it kind of goes that way. So Candace gets this information, she shares it with me, and then we have this conversation about it. So no, that's I don't have any updated information from that.
Yeah, I'll kind of add to where the justification comes from. Like, we actually had quite a few conversations, myself, my articulation officer, Ben Mudgett, along with our transitions folk at Palomar overseeing this. So Suzanne Sebring and Elena, who's at Palomar, who works on that program. We have these conversations about it. Given the fact that students are in a classroom with a teacher, and then they take an exam, we felt that that wasn't under sort of the guidance or the spirit of credit for prior learning in the way that it's described in Title 55050. Now, but the verbiage, if you look at the policy of this, is still called credit by exam. And so that's where I think the confusion comes in, right? Well, is it prior learning or is it current learning in a classroom where they take a test? And those exams are, in my understanding, is that the faculty at the college would work with those high school instructors to review those exams, or I don't know, approve or whatever those exams. So that's one way. So that's kind of where we're coming from, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's where the chancellor's office is going to come from. And so we're just going to wait and see what the chancellor's office asks us to do. And for me, the big thing was, if you're going to have us report data on who's completing credit for prior learning, right? If that's what the state wants, and some colleges are including the high school articulation credit by exam and some are not, and then funding gets tied to that and to the completers, I'm like, that's not going to fly, right? We got to all be on the same page, presenting the same data. So I guess my other takeaway from this is that the chancellor's office, as this grows, right, as these questions and issues come up, there is good communication with the chancellor's office. We at Palomar also, like, I'm in constant communication with the chancellor's office, like all the time, like at least weekly we're emailing, but then also with the ASCCC, we have contacts there too. And so we're staying in communication. So if there is anything that comes up for your college or these kinds of questions, right? You can reach out to me and Tina, but you could also reach out to Shantae Guinea. Jody Lewis at the foundation is also very involved. You can go on the Vision Resource Center if most colleges are connected to that, maybe through their professional development portal or something like that. And you could certainly post questions there. So hopefully that helped answer your question, Amy. All right. Any other questions for us today? You got us for a few more minutes.
Any additional questions come up on the app? But I also wanted to just share, I know that we've got our questions slide, but when you look at our presentation, there are additional slides at the end, just so you know. Those are kind of, if you wanted to see just what our intake survey looks like and the actual CPL form, we kept those slides in there. So if you are interested in that too.
Great. All right. Well, if there are no other questions at this moment, I just, want to thank you for joining us today. On those slides, you do have our contact information. You certainly could reach out to us. I do offer like once a month, I do a credit for prior learning Q&A drop-in session. I'll be creating more of I haven't set them up for spring yet, but I will be doing that as well. You could certainly email me. I could send you that link. And that's just an opportunity for colleges to drop in and ask questions relating to CPL and kind of what we've been doing so far in this process. I'll also let you know that there is a regional group now down here in the San Diego area, county area, our SEDICA group, and we are working with sort of a CPL representative from each of the colleges in that group, and starting to put together a Train the Trainer series, which hopefully will come out in the spring to help colleges and you know, people like counselors, faculty, administrators, all of the folk that are needed to really make this happen. So there will be more and more opportunities coming up for you to learn more about this.
Well, thank you, Tina and Candace. This was really helpful, and thank you for all the links and information you provided. Attendees, please remember to rate the session after you leave. And just thank you all and enjoy your last session. And thanks for taking the time to be here over the last 2 days.
All right. So thank you, everyone. Have a really good rest of your workshop or series, and have a great day.